Tell us about lightning, because you're a friend of lightning, apparently.
Well, that completely took me way out of context. I didn't know that much about lightning. And I didn't really know how dangerous it was on a motorcycle.
Shop pay installments, that's right. It's available in the Law Abiding Biker store. You can now basically buy products when you want, knowing that you can pay in 4 equal payments, interest free. You guys asked for it. We brought it to the store. So check it out. We got us an email here. Let's check this out. It says, Rick, it's Sunday and I'm getting ready to bring my family to church. And I just happened to see that an email came in. Had I known I was going to get this level of customer service, I would have put more than a stipend in the tip entry. You now have a loyal customer. Future purchases will occur, and I'll make up for that. We'll spread the word for you. I'm also a business owner. I know how big referrals are. Thank you, Steve. Thanks for the email, Steve. We appreciate it very, very much. He went to lawabidingbiker.com/contact and left us an email there. Hey, Bikeaholics, 03D has a wide variety of innovative products for your Harley-Davidson and a brand new line for the all-new Honda Goldwing named Gold Strike.
I like gold.
Top quality, affordable chrome lighting and comfort products. Zero Gold Strike are the motorcycle LED lighting innovators for CAN bus plug-and-play system compatibility. Head over to lawabidingbiker.com/store. Check out our full line of 03D products. Lurch.
Yes.
You want to ride longer?
You know I do.
Are you tired of that sore Nicky ass?
Always.
Then fix it with a high-quality butt buffer seat cushion. Head over to lawabidingbiker.com/store. Check out our lineup of butt buffer seat cushions.
Respect that ass.
You know it. Oh, yeah. Once you've had Rick Rack, you'll never go back. The ultimate motorcycle luggage rack solution. Forget those messy straps and bungee cords. Go strapless with a Rick Rack quick attach luggage system and quality bag. Head over to lawabidingbiker.com/store and get hooked up now.
Rick Rack.
Well done. Shall we just do this thing?
Yeah, buddy.
Shall we?
It's about time. Let's get her going. Drop it in gear, let out the clutch, twist that throttle.
Welcome back, you freaking bikeaholics. This is the podcast for the motorcycle majority, the Big MM. That's right, also known as the
99%.
That's right. Large and in charge of the motorcycle scene. More than any time in history, yep. By being here, by listening, you're part of what we call the hashtag.
Biker Revolution.
That's right. Although I know Lurch and I have just one question for you before we get started.
What are you waiting for, Bikeaholics? Mount up and let us take you on another wild-ass ride.
There you go. That's right. Ryan Erlacher here, your host of the Law Abiding Biker Podcast and your
high-tech redneck.
There you go. And of course, we have him right here in the studio. It's been a minute.
It's been a little while.
Been a minute. Wow.
Whew.
Nice
one.
One
Took the wind out of me.
Nice one, dude. Yeah, of course, Lurch here, just the two of us today hanging out. We've got basically an interview. I'm not going to say a lot about it yet, but we've got a really cool interview for you. And that's going to be the main topic today on somebody who rides, and he rides a lot. He rides far and near and
everywhere, pretty much.
In between. Yeah. So he's an awesome guest. I'm really looking forward to interviewing him. We will get to that. Of course, patrons, here in this year and the new year, because I don't know when this is going to air.
This will be in the new year. 2022.
There you go, ramping it up in 2022. Of course, we love our beloved patron members. We love our sponsors up front, but we also love our patron members. They're direct sponsors for the show. And we would like to thank some of our newest patrons.
We got James Locklear of Evans, Georgia. He is a top-tier patron. Nathan Modi and Gordon Miller of Xenia, Ohio.
Tanner Stewart of Queen Creek, Arizona. Michael Batolis of Rossmore, California, top tier. And Sean Anderson of Hayward, California, top tier.
We got Jeff Narat of Auburn, California. Brian Bauer of Davison, Michigan. And Levon Ramos. I remember meeting Levon down at our summer patron meetup down there in California, of Stockton, California.
Nice memory. Nice memory. That's right. Where'd they go? Lawabidingbiker.com/Patreon, Patreon. That's right. You can pledge a certain amount per piece of content. No risk to you because you can put a monthly cap. There are benefits, of course, such as T-shirts, stickers, access to that private Facebook group. It's a troll-free zone. Access to live video broadcasts and chat, podcasts early, premium videos up on request, and of course, access to those ride, meetup, and events. And we just continue to appreciate our patron members so very much, and hanging out with you guys, and a lot going on in that private Facebook group. So thanks a lot for being in there, guys, and making it happen. All right. New free video. And we got so many, but we like to mention them when we can. This has been out. This hasn't been out that long.
No.
This is our Harley-Davidson Empire Collection review. It's a bunch of new parts, grips and pegs and floorboards.
Derby covers, all kinds of stuff.
Yep. And we want to thank
mirrors.
We want to thank Harley-Davidson. They did send it out to us. Sorry, my computer's glitching here. They did send it out to us. No strings attached. Just asked us, hey, you want some stuff? And so we are going to eventually. We just show it in that video, and you can just go lawabidingbiker.com/whatever episode number this is, and that is the show notes for this episode, because it's a long URL, but it's on the YouTube channel, and you get to review it, and then we're going to put it on patron member Brad Johnston's bike at some point, and in between schedule and other stuff, and of course we'll let you know when that happens. And that stuff was given away in the private Facebook group for patrons, right?
That's right. Mid-level and above patrons are in the private group, and we asked who would be interested in it. Had a couple of requirements. I think it was 17 and newer touring model, and we had several people put in, and Brad Johnson was selected, so we'll be installing that on his bike. We had a little bit of that. He got the black machine cut. We had a full set of that, and then we had a partial set of the black that we sent to the runner-up, Matt Haywood. And our plan in the future, if Harley sends us more stuff, is to review it and then give it away to the community, give it to our patrons as a little thank you.
Yep, we like to give back. We appreciate you guys so much, and so that's what we decided to do with the stuff. So Lurch put that together, and I appreciate it very, very much. Mm-hmm. All right, let's dive into it, guys. This is our interview we're going to do here. We've got him on the line waiting for us here, and we are going to interview one Chris Foster. He is a Guinness Book World Record motorcycle rider. I hadn't heard of him, and I don't know if any of you guys have, but some very interesting things that he's got going on, and I can't wait to dive in with him about some past rides and things he's done, and then the most recent, which is the Guinness Book of World Records, and it does include the Harley Pan America. I'll just give that away because we read about him and stuff like that.
Sneak peek up front.
Yep. And so we're good to go with the interview. We don't want to keep him waiting any longer. So what do you say?
Let's get to it. Let's talk to him.
Thanks, Chris, for joining us today and being on the show. Appreciate you taking some time.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited about it. Very good to be here.
Good. Well, Lurch and I here in the studio, and I'm very interested to learn about a little bit of your background, and then, of course, some of the things you did. Obviously, an avid motorcycle rider. Why don't we just dive in and give me just a little bit of background about yourself, as far as how did you first, where are you from, and whatever you're willing to share, and things like that.
Sure. Yeah. Let's see. I'll start from the beginning. First motorcycle, about 8 years old, saved up my paper route money, bought a Honda 70. And then after college, I hadn't been past, I'm in San Diego, born and raised in San Diego, hadn't really been past San Diego. So I thought I'd take a big trip. So after college, I sold everything I had and bought one motorcycle and did around the perimeter of the United States. So basically San Diego up to Vancouver, over to Maine, down to Florida, and then back home. And that was sort of my first big epic trip, if you will. And, learned a lot about the United States, the different regions, different states, and so on. Then I started touring, doing a little bit of European stuff, and that got a little bit monotonous. I wanted something more, so I started doing some longer distance adventure type stuff. So I'm kind of a solo guy. I don't like to go on organized tours or anything like that. So I got, my first big one was across Siberia. So I went into Korea, rode up from South Korea to the northern border of South Korea, and then took a ferry around North Korea, dropped into Russia, rode across Siberia into Western Europe, and then I got my bike to Florida and then rode home. So that was sort of my first big epic circumnavigation type of thing.
Okay. I'm going to back you up a little bit.
Am I going too fast?
No, I love it. I love it.
You're going to edit this, right?
Yeah. We don't even need to. I love, this is just a casual conversation. So okay. So you get out of college. That's kind of when you, what age is that?
Just the normal age. I did it during college. Now that I think back, sorry about that. And then when I got out of college, I sold my only motorcycle at 22 years old. And I went over to Europe and bought a motorcycle there and toured around there for 3 months on the motorcycle. So that was my first European trip. So maybe about 20 is when I did the circumnavigation of the United States.
Hey, Chris, this is Matt, and you probably heard Ryan refer to me as Lurch earlier, and that's what the audience knows me as. So if you feel like calling me Lurch, it's a nickname I've had for a long time. Feel free to. What created this desire to get out and get around the world? I mean, what was the thing that kind of fueled the spark that made you go to Europe and do that first big trip?
I hadn't been many places, and I, when I heard about world events, especially like world history in high school and so on, it didn't really make sense. The storming of Normandy and the Maginot Line and all that stuff. And I kind of had a thirst for that, for the historical aspect and the cultural part too. I've grown up in Southern California, and, I'm 30 minutes from the border, and I'd been to Mexico a lot. Went there camping as a child and, spent a lot of time down there, but hadn't had a lot of cultural experiences. And I really wanted that. I missed that. And I want to do it in a unique way.
So I'm curious, and I know it's a question some of the audience definitely may have. You're young and you're doing this. Are you retired, or did you work? Because that's a lot of time to go traveling around.
You mean in the beginning when I first started doing it?
Yeah, you got out of college, you said, and yeah.
That's a great question. I started as a teacher, so I had summers off.
Oh.
And summers off with no money. So the European one, I went to what was then Price Club, before Costco, and I bought, I think it was $29 tent, and I tented it most of the time through Europe, and at that time, Europe was pretty darn cheap, but I could afford tent and gas and one motorcycle. So the summers off had given me an opportunity. And then I taught elementary school and middle school for about 17 years. And then I started working at the university. And I found out they have this thing called a sabbatical, which I didn't even know about. And, where you can do sort of a combined work study and travel, but really it's about 95% travel and about 5% work study. And I took 3 sabbaticals during my career as a college professor.
Okay.
So that afforded me a whole year off while getting paid to do the travel that I wanted to do. Okay,
good, because it sounds great. And I'm like, how does somebody able to do that? So yeah, I appreciate that.
I was pretty lucky. I fell upon something, a job that I loved, and a career that I had a passion for, and the time to get off. And I did combine those things. So I'd visit schools along the way, and sometimes go to official conferences and presentations on things, and learn more about the educational systems in different countries, which I would do anyway, even if I wasn't doing a sabbatical, because I'm fascinated by it and like I said, I have a passion for it.
Yeah. Clearly. So you rode around, I want to kind of go back to your first big trip overseas. You were talking about you rode through North Korea.
Yeah, I rode through. I shipped the motorcycle over to South Korea.
Okay.
On the south part, and then I went up through Korea and South Korea until I couldn't go any further, and then I got on a ferry and ferried around North Korea. Mm-hmm. So I didn't get into, and then I got off the ferry when Russia touched North Korea. So I basically went around North Korea, which I honestly, I didn't know about the geography before I planned all this, that, Korea sort of touches Russia and,
yeah.
That. So then I got off in the top part of the northern part of North Korea, the lower part of Siberia.
And at that time, what kind of motorcycle are you rolling around on?
I had a BMW 1150.
All right. And that,
yep.
I guess, boy, we can go a lot of places with it. I'm just really, really curious. What do you do for when you're out like that, for like in a place you don't know in different countries, for like bike maintenance and stuff?
It's interesting you asked that question. So first of all, in Siberia, and I tried to do my homework ahead of time. It's not the same alphabet. They use Bukvas, which is an entirely different, alphabet, the Cyrillic alphabet. So I tried to learn that alphabet so I could at least read the signs. I didn't really I didn't master that. So I on about the third or the fourth day, my starter went out on my motorcycle. The motorcycle only had maybe 8,000 miles on it. The starter went out in the middle of Siberia in a village that probably had 500 people. And here I am stranded in the middle of Siberia, and I don't know the language at all. So they got the high school, they hunted down the high school English teacher to talk to me and give me some information. And then I connected with the sort of overland community there, and they came and helped me get out and get things taken care of. It took about 3 weeks to get a used starter shipped in to where I was. So I was dead in the water for 3 weeks. I get the starter and I put it in that night, no English, no English with them. And we sit there with the starter and the darn thing doesn't work, and I'm sitting there like, how do you communicate, about the electrical stuff and this and that? I mean, you do your best and make drawings and things like that. I did learn all the food words though. I learned bread and soup and things like that from just going into the kitchens and looking at stuff, because, I was in some pretty remote villages where there's no one that was going to be speaking English. And the other thing that I came across, which was kind of funny at this point, is I'd take my map out, right? And I'd get out my paper map and I'd show them, and I might as well have been going to the moon, because those people had never been, 50 miles from their village ever, and I tell them in one day I'm going, 250 miles down the road, and they're laughing at me. They think I'm joking with them, so language was a huge barrier. And there was no Google Translate back then, those types of things. So I had a dictionary with me, a bilingual dictionary. I'd look things up and just did my best. But, the good people and the motorcycle people always made it happen, right? They'll figure out a way to help you and make things happen. So, a lot of pointing and trying their words. I made the language happen.
So I'm just saying, I got to ask, like, I don't know if I have the courage to do something like that. Like, you're in a remote area, you're by yourself. I mean,
very adventurous.
Yeah. I a lot of the audience, I'm sure, is thinking it's a cool story, but like, no language, what if you get stranded or stuck, or what does your cell phone even work?
No, there's no cell phone.
Probably didn't have one back then, huh?
There's no cell phone coverage, but there was the internet. So you could get into places with the internet and use the internet. Usually you couldn't use your devices. You had to go onto their computers and so on. But there was the internet, and I did use that. But, as I look back, I sort of have your thought, like, what was I thinking? But once I was on land and a couple days in, it just started feeling normal, and people, they would, one time there was this road crew working at the side of the road, and I stopped, and the guy was one of the workers, and he said, in English, he said, "I know you." And I'm like, "Really?" And he goes, "Yeah, the guy in Vladivostok called me up and said you were coming my way." and to say hi when you came through. So there's this tom-tom connection of all these bikers, and the biking community there is a pretty strong community. And they were sort of watching out for me because I connected with them once I'd broken down, and they had my back the whole time. And they had set people around, and they'd kept on sending me emails, said, hey, when you get into this town, so-and-so is going to be there to meet you, and so on, which didn't end up happening except after the first couple of days, because I think they sort of lost track of me, no GPS tracker or any of that technology. But they definitely had my back, and they were willing to help, and they were watching out for me. And I think that really helped me feel more comfortable knowing that someone knew I was out there, right? But there's all sorts of dangers. They got bears out there, so you're camping, and there's signs there's signs at the gas station with bears, and in Russian it says, beware of the bears, right? When you're filling up with gas, when you could find the, traditional gas stations. So my biggest hurdle was really getting fuel. That was my biggest problem because there wasn't a lot of traditional fuel stations as we know it around. So that was the biggest hurdle with that trip.
So let me ask you this. Let's say you had a major back then, and then I want to get into some of the current stuff too, but I'm fascinated. Let's say you had a massive engine failure in the middle of nowhere there, not a starter. Like, how do you get out of there? Or is this you should have thought about this and you didn't?
You can't carry, imagine if you start. I carried spares with me of stuff, but you can't carry a spare starter with you. That thing's as big as a tent and a sleeping bag. So I had the idea when the starter went out to just the Trans-Siberian Railway's been running there for 100 years, right? So when the starter went out, I went down to the railway station and I said, hey, I want to put me and my bike on the railway and get over to Moscow. And they said, okay, you'll have to crate it up. And once you get it crated up, it'll go on the freight train. And I said, well, can I go on the freight train? No, you can't go on the freight train. You got to go on a different train. So it was completely mismatched. And I really wanted to do that. And so, first I called, then I went to the train station myself and just showed up. I thought, if I show up, they're just going to roll that thing on the back car and strap it down. And I'm going to be all good, right? But that didn't happen that way. They had a lot of rules and regulations. There's no way they were letting me on. So that was my initial thought. If I have a catastrophic breakdown, then I'll just put it on the train and get to where I'm going. And that didn't work the way I thought it was going to work, even with the starter problem. Because the starter problem initially, I started with a 70cc motorcycle. I thought I could bump start the GS, which there's no way you could bump start a GS, and people are just telling me, just push it down a hill, park it on a hill and bump start it every day. I towed it one time and then I was able to get it running to figure out if it was an alternator or starter to troubleshoot it so I could do some electrical analysis on it. But there's no way you can bump start a GS on a normal road, unless you're being towed behind a car. So anyway, that was my plan if I broke down, and that never happened except the starter. And I only had a 1-month visa. So I basically went across about 80% of Siberia and Russia, which is on the western side of the Ural Mountains, in like 7 days. I was riding like 15, 20 hours a day because I couldn't get a visa extension either. There was no way to get a visa extension as well. So I sort of stuck. So I had a fast 3 final weeks of the trip. And the first 3 weeks was basically sitting in between a couple of villages waiting for parts.
Wow. What do you do for food when you're riding that long, and what are you eating?
So they have at the side of it. So there's this Trans-Siberian Railway, and of course there's a road alongside of it, and it comes and goes. And I was going into these towns the first 2 or 3 days. I was going into these towns. But they've got towns out there that are bigger than we've ever. They've got towns of like 2 million people that we've never even heard the names of in the middle of Siberia. So I was going into these towns and trying to read Cyrillic and trying to find hotels. I gave that up. I ended up going to along the road. There's these cafes, just a little mom and pop cafe, and I found out that on top of the cafe, there's always at least 2 to 5 rooms on top of the cafe. So that's where I ended up staying the rest of the time. If I wasn't tent camping, I would just stay at the cafe, and they would always have rooms and they would always have food, right? So that ended up to be my go-to once I figured out about 10 food words and, how to ask for a room and how to read hotel in Cyrillic.
Yeah.
Figure that out. But they sort of had a common look. And hotel is one of the easier words to read in Cyrillic. So that ended up being, and all the stuff I'd read, nobody had ever done that. I mean, they'd gone into these towns like, I'm just thinking of a couple of big ones, Blagovizhinsk. I mean, Blagovizhinsk is probably over 1 million people. I'd never heard of it. Khabarovsk, is a huge place, maybe a couple million people. I'd never even heard of that name of that place. But to get in and out of the towns was very, very challenging, and to find the hotel and to get out of the town because things didn't operate like normal.
Are you searching for the easiest and quickest detachable luggage system for your motorcycle? Rick Rack has just what you're looking for. Forget all those frustrating straps and bungee cords that can come loose and slap your paint. Check out one of Rick Rack's awesome quick attach strapless luggage rack systems. This father-son team designed something really special. You can't find it anywhere else. Yep. And these guys ride, so they truly understand the needs of bikers. The Rick Rack quick attach system is strong, durable, and secure with a lockable system. Also, check out their full line of quality touring bags to accompany your quick detach system. Once you use Rick Rack, you'll never go back. What are you waiting for, Bikeaholics? Head over to lawabidingbiker.com/store and check out our full line of Rick Rack systems and bags. Wow, fascinating stuff, I know. All right, so that was one of your bigger first trips, and you took some others after that. I want to get to your current stuff, but I don't want to leave that out.
I guess my two other large ones, I did sort of the typical trip from the tip of South America, and I went to Antarctica on that trip. And then I went up to Prudhoe Bay. And I think a lot of people have done that and are doing it. But I did that trip. And then more recently, about 3 years ago, I went from Nordkapp, Norway, which is the highest navigable place in the Western Hemisphere, maybe just Europe. And then I went down to Nordkapp Cape Town in South Africa, overland. So, and that was a real fun one too. Had a lot of good times in Africa and so on. And it was kind of interesting because they weren't really looking for someone like me, right? So, I show up and, I'm not in a big group in Africa. I'm just showing up on a motorcycle in the middle of a village and they're looking at me like, what are you doing here? And then I take off my helmet. And of course, someone with gray hair is just destined for not doing anything and sitting around in the village in Africa without, they're just too old. So I take off my helmet and they're like, oh my God, some old guy. What's this guy doing here, right? And then for part of the trip, I had my wife with me and she'd take off her helmet and it'd be like, oh, there's a woman on the back too. So we'd really throw them for a loop, in Africa. But had an awesome time there, just a fantastic time there. So those are the two other big sort of longer term travel trips that I'd taken after Siberia.
So your wife is with you on some of that. You just said,
yes,
she's right
on the Africa portion. We met in Ethiopia and then continued all the way to Cape Town. And
she trooper handled that and loves it or what?
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. That was full of all sorts. I picked her up in Ethiopia and I fell in love with Ethiopia, very unique place in the world. And we ended up spending a month in Ethiopia alone. And I'm like, we got to get moving. There's just so much to do. And we still got, 10 other countries to go to. We don't have enough time. So we had to sort of pick major things that we wanted to see in each country and let the politics and the border closures and openings sort of guide us the rest of the way on that particular trip. But had a fantastic time, very safe, very friendly, never had any, personal safety concerns or anything like that.
We're talking about a couple trips now, obviously in the past to Russia and all that. Are you staying on, I know you're riding, more of an adventure bike, but are you mainly following paved routes and common routes?
When possible. So two people up on Yeah, you think that's going to be a good thing and you sort of plan for that, right? But what happens is sometimes the road doesn't agree with you. So Ethiopia, we got really stuck. I mean, we were on like a footpath, so off goes all the luggage, off goes the extra passenger, and then I have to like bomb it going up the hill through rocks to try to get to the up of the hill and then carry all the luggage back and put the extra person on it. And so the signage wasn't that good and my knowledge wasn't that good. We'll just say that. And so I got stuck one time. It was an unbelievable stuck. And we didn't carry at that particular part. We didn't have any camping gear with us. So we couldn't just pull over and spend the night because, I'd usually plan for 4 hours of travel each day. Right. So if you had to go 6 or 7, you'd be okay. But this particular day, we were probably on the bike for 18 hours, to get somewhere to end up spending the night.
Wow. Your wife is definitely a troop for, I don't know, a lot of wives would do that. That's very, very fascinating. And then say they liked it, you know what I mean? Or say, I'm never going with you again.
Sounds like she has the same adventure spirit.
Right? I'm going again, right? That's the test.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so are you still riding the same bike or do you upgrade by now?
I'm still, that was on a 1200 GS, and I've got that still I've left that in Europe because that's right. It shipped to after, and I've still got that bike.
Okay. Are you retired now?
It's funny you asked. I just did in August. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I worked for the state of California for 37 years. And so I retired a little bit earlier than some. And yeah. So, but now that will lead us into our next thing of why the United States. But now I've got a lot of places on my list, but the whole pandemic thing is sort of made that more challenging, right? For a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah. I imagine that's put a monkey wrench in a lot of the overseas type stuff that you were doing for sure.
Right. And I'm thinking of, I've got this list. I was just looking at it yesterday. I've got this list, like 22, 23, 24, 25. And I thought of the saying, man plans, God laughs, that type of thing. So looking at it, moving stuff around, reading more articles, but who's got that crystal ball right now?
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Now, back then when you were doing those trips, are you just doing this for yourself, or were you trying to promote it or something, or tell people and get financial help, or this is just all on your own?
Mostly on my own. On a smaller scale, I was doing that. I'd accepted, some product from people and things like that. But it takes so much logistical organization to just get going with these things. Trying to chase down, money and sponsors is a whole new. That's a whole new full-time job. Right, doing that. And I already had a full-time job, while I was doing these things. So my biggest sponsor, I think, was the California State University, because they gave me the time I needed. And that was, and time is money. And so that was my biggest benefit, and probably my biggest supporter in this was being able to do that and serve as an academic during part of those trips.
Yeah. So they knew what you were doing in the university, so they gave you the time?
Yes, that's right.
I see. Okay. Yeah. Very cool. Very cool. Well, you're definitely retired. You're going to have more time to ride now. I want to ask, on those trips, especially the overseas one, if there's a couple things that you can dig out that you're like, I definitely wished I would have known that, for the audience when you look back on the overseas ones, that I should have did this or I should have did that, or is there anything like that?
I think is this an advice question?
Yeah, kind of like, you know what? I definitely would pass that along to somebody if they're going for a first time.
Don't be afraid and don't overplan. I got so much bad recon from friends and other people who traveled, especially going to like Siberia. They thought I was nuts, and Africa. Again, I got a lot. Even from friends and family, they got this and this and this going on, and there's terrorist activity here and there. Well, you know what? They don't care about me. They don't really care about that. I took one trip. Probably the scariest thing I got was I was in Copper Canyon in Mexico, and I ended up a bridge got washed out, and I was going through some dirt roads, and and the guy stepped out of the bushes with no shirts and no shoes and machine guns and fired and they fired their machine guns up in the air as I was going by, and that was a little bit scary. But then they asked what I was doing there and where I was going and a few questions. And then, the greeting in Spanish, vaya con Dios, go with God, and then they wished me good luck. And they crept back into the bushes for the next people that were violating their drug route, except I didn't know about it at the time. So I get, don't be afraid and don't overplan, just be a little bit loose with the plans and then, enjoy the moment and don't get too caught up in things. I know people that have got, schedules and plans and this and that. And sometimes you need that, but those would be my two, things I'd pass along.
Okay, good. The gun story, that's fascinating. That happened. That would just scare the bejesus out of me, I think.
Yeah, it was a little scary.
Yeah. Especially,
I'm not going to lie here. It was a little scary. That's been the first time I've had a machine gun just, shot off right next to me to scare me. And it did do the trick. I stopped and, listened and listened to their demands. But we had a bigger group. We had some friends of mine that come over from Europe, and we had 4 or 5 motorcycles going through at the same time. We had wives, and we had children with us too. We had one boy who was 12 years old with us. So I said, look, we're not doing anything wrong here. We've got women, we've got children. We're just going to the Copper Canyon as tourists, and we're from a different country, and we respect it, and respect you, and we just want to be able to pass. And they said, fine, go ahead. So. Okay. Who could have planned for that?
Yeah, you really can't. On some of those instances, are they like checking for passport or ID or anything, or it's pretty much just
the guys with no
they're probably not.
They're checking. They're really checking to see if you're going to be messing up their drug route.
Right.
I mean, it's their place. They control it. They're moving drugs back and forth through there, and they want to know who you are and what you're doing down there. Because we got off the normal route, and now we're going through basically footpaths trying to get back on the normal route because the bridge was washed out. We didn't plan to go that way, and they hadn't planned on us coming that way. So we were out of the normal zone of people moving through that area.
Yeah. Fascinating.
So no passports.
Yeah. Not on that. I didn't figure on that one. No money either. Just a quick, some money. All right. So let's move into some of your more current stuff here. So you've done all this. Now you're getting interested in doing a Guinness Book of World Records. Was this your first? We're going to get into it, but was this your first attempt at that, or did any of your other rides encompass that?
I tried the year. I started the exact same thing the year before, and COVID shut it down. I mean, the national park. Not only was COVID going crazy, but the national park started completely shutting down 100%. And since I was trying to hit all of them, then one of them being closed wasn't a possibility, right? So I got through some of California and Arizona, and I started getting into New Mexico, and all of a sudden the first park that closed was Big Bend. So I'd started it the year before, and I had to scrap it, and it was very disappointing because I had everything organized, I had the bike, I got everything going, I'm ready to roll, and you get into this, and then boom, it shuts down. And by the way, it's been the first trip I've ever taken that I haven't been able to finish what I started, right? So, you have to go, turn around and go back and, tail between your legs and disappointment. So that was my first attempt at that particular trip.
Okay. So I want to talk about this, obviously now. It's very fascinating. I want to give the audience, because we kind of breezed over it, but basically you wanted to ride all the national parks in the U.S. in the lower 48. Is that correct?
Yes, 100% of them.
On a motorcycle, obviously.
Yes.
Okay. Now, at this point, you're switching bikes, or Harley finds out about this or something, and they want to give you a Pan America, or how did this all come about?
I thought, well, I'm doing, this is my sort of big epic trip since I was 21, 22 years old across the United States. I thought, how better to do it than on a US made bike, and the one bike that stood out was the Pan America at the time, because it was absolutely what I thought I needed to ride, that style bike. I needed something big enough to, haul. And this particular trip, I went with the kitchen sink and all the camping gear and all that stuff, because I really wanted to spend some time in the parks as well. So I approached Harley and they agreed. And the challenge at that point was getting the bike when there wasn't that many of them around, right? So they agreed, but they said, well, now we got to find a bike. I said, I'll take any color, any size, if it's already been a demo, I don't need something new. And I don't know, a couple of weeks later, the person who's in charge of that contacted me and said, what color do you want? I'm like, whoa, wait a minute. I'm ready to take something that's been, beat up by the press corps, but let me get back to you on that. So got the bike, got the outfit that I want. They treated me very well, getting the bike all prepped, exactly what I wanted, and got the bike and got it home and sort of set it up for what I wanted to do. And then I took a couple week trip in California, just a shakedown tour to make sure everything worked, and I worked and the bike worked and I knew the bike, and then I headed off on the trip.
Okay. So give you a loaner bike to do this. Obviously they're promoting it because how many parks? I believe it's 51 national parks in the lower 48. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. What's your timeline? Let me ask this. You want to visit them all. Obviously we're on a Pan America. What's the rules? I didn't actually read the world record, but was there a time limit? Give me what you had to do to make this record.
So Guinness is really interesting. There's a lot of interesting parts to it. One is they don't want you to do something that's on a motor vehicle that has time limits. Like they don't want to, they wouldn't approve something like fastest time between Pacific Ocean and Atlantic Ocean, because they don't want to endorse speeding or disregard for the law. Okay, so that's the first thing. And the second thing you have to do before you do a Guinness event is you have to have it approved before you ever start. So a smaller one, like, how many ping pong balls can you stuff in your mouth? That's a pretty easy one, like, oh, here's what I'm going to do, and then they'll approve it. And then you video yourself cramming the ping pong balls in, whatever, however that works. Right. So, so you get it approved, and then, there hadn't been anybody that had done it before and claimed it as a Guinness World Record. Okay. And I ran into all sorts of people on the road that said, oh, I've done that. I did that last year, 2 years ago on my bike. And then I would pick out, some obscure park, and I'd say, did you go there? And they're like, oh no, I didn't go to that one. So I'm thinking to myself, politely, well, all is all, you do them all, or you don't, you go big or you go home. We got to get this all thing done. And they've added some too. That's the other oddity of this, is they can add parks at any given time. So to answer your initial question, I was setting the initial record for how long it was going to take. Okay.
And how does Guinness verify this?
You've got to propose your verification techniques to them. I used several different things. I used a logbook that had to be signed in every park, like a physical hard signature. And that ended up being hard because there wasn't always a ranger in the park at the same time. There's not always someone at a gate letting you in and, dismissing you once you get out. So that was a little bit hard, finding someone in every park. But I doubled down on two locator beacons, spot locator beacons. And I had two of those mounted on the bike at all times. So every single inch and minute of my trip is documented electronically in the parks. That's the best verification method.
Okay. So let's dive in a little bit deeper. When did you do this trip? When did you do it? I'm curious about the mileage, and how many days and all that kind of stuff. And let's go there now. Hey, Bikeaholics, Zero 3D has a wide variety of innovative products for your Harley-Davidson and a brand new line for your Honda Goldwing, named Gold Strike. Affordable chrome lighting and comfort products, and CAN bus made simple with plug-and-play lighting systems. Head over to lawabidingbiker.com/store and check out our full line of Zero 3D products.
Ooh, I hope I got all. I should have had that written down. Let's see.
It's all right.
July 10th, and I set off. And again, two of my biggest worries before I set off was, are the parks going to close down because of COVID? Because each park has its own superintendent, and they can just flip the switch and shut off the park. So I'm imagining myself like all the way back to California and picking up the last parks, and I'll get to that in a second, because one of the parks did try to close on me because of a fire. And the other thing is they can the president or the Congress can add a park at any given time. And that was actually a bigger concern of mine because we got a new president. Our former president opened some national parks during his 4 years, and I was thinking, well, what if our current president wants to add a national park? And I'm all the way back to California, and they come up with another one in Arkansas. Then what's going to happen? And there's no control over that. I mean, I wrote to the Park Service and asked them, and they said, well, it can happen any day. It can be an act of Congress, or the president can open a national park. And I'm like, well, I better move quickly then. So I left on July 10th, and my first national park was Joshua Tree National Park, closest one to my house. And then I went up to Death Valley. And when I got up to Death Valley, it was 124 degrees when I went in there. I mean, it was hotter than hot. 105, 110 is bearable, but I felt like I had my head in the oven, And so I got the lower part of California finished, and then after that went over to the Grand Canyon. All sorts of weird things happen in hot weather. I was riding next to another guy, and his soles of his shoes came off of his boots. They just completely melted off of his boots in the middle of his ride through the Grand Canyon. So, I mean, through Death Valley. So I left at that point, and kind of went on a southern route, down through Arizona, Texas, that route. Then there's another national park that's really out of place and adds on a lot of time. The St. Louis Arch National Park, which isn't really a national park. It used to be a monument, but it got upgraded. So you can be a monument and you can get upgraded to national park. That got upgraded to a national park, even though there's no park there. But that's really, if you look at the national parks and connect the dots, it's in the middle of nowhere. Probably added a couple thousand miles. And then I went down to Florida from there, and then up to Maine in that direction, and over the top part of the United States going west, up to Washington State, and then down to California, down Washington, Oregon, and back to San Diego, with my last park being Channel Islands National Park.
Okay. And obviously you didn't have to go through all the states because not all the states have national parks. So
that's right.
You were just kind of routing around trying to get a route that hit the parks best, basically.
Yeah, the most efficient route, and also taking into consideration climate as well and all that, because it can get I got a lot of rain, I got lightning, I got snow in places and snow flurries and hail, so there's some high elevations in the national parks that you got to try to time right.
Yeah, no doubt. Tell us about lightning, because you're a friend of lightning, apparently.
Well, that completely took me way out of context. I didn't know that much about lightning. And I didn't really know how dangerous it was on a motorcycle. So I'd run into lightning storms before, but I had the naive understanding that you were insulated because you had rubber tires, which I know now is not true. So on a motorcycle, you're not protected from lightning. So I am in Ohio, going to a national park, and in the distance. And again, I'm from Southern California, so I'm pretty ignorant when it comes to weather. But I see a lightning storm way off in the distance. It looks like 15 or 20 miles away, and I'm on a toll road, so there's not a lot of exits available. So it's getting closer, and I can hear the thunder, and all of a sudden, boom! I mean, it sounds like a bomb blew up on my motorcycle, and I could feel it was pouring down so hard. I was probably going about 25 to 35 miles an hour just to see, and the rest of the cars were doing the same, and they were crashing into each other, pulling off on the side. And I thought, well, I'm just going to keep on going till I can get off somewhere safe. And I was covering the front brake with my hand, and that's what conducted the electricity. So the lightning hit the bike, and it went up through my fingers. I could feel it zipping through my fingers, up through my wrist to my elbow and to my shoulder. And when it got to my shoulder, basically my whole body buzzed. It was just like a buzzing thing, and I didn't initially know what was happening. And then I looked down at the instrument cluster, and the bike was dead. So now I'm in the middle of a freeway with people crashing into each other with a dead bike and no flashers, no turn signals, nothing, because the bike's completely dead. So it hit the bike hard enough to kill all the electronics. And then I figured out I got hit. And so I got off to the side of the road and went under a bridge, which I read recently you're not supposed to do that. I still don't know where the heck you're supposed to go on a motorcycle when lightning's hitting right in your neighborhood. So then I got out of there and got to a hotel, checked into a hotel, and then went to the emergency room. And got the test. They tested my heart, did a few other tests. The doctor comes in after all the tests. And at this point, it was about 12:30 in the morning. And she says, "Happy birthday." I said, "Oh, that's right. It is my birthday." And she said, "Well, your birthday present this year is you're still alive." And I said, "Was it that dangerous?" She goes, "Heck yes, it's dangerous." She goes, "Lucky your bike took most of the hit." I said, "What are you talking about? I didn't talk to you about the bike." I said, it did damage some of the electronics, but she said, "Well, if it didn't take the hit, you wouldn't be here talking to me." And
wow.
So I understood the seriousness of it at that point. And I didn't run into lightning again until I was in like Idaho, lying down in a cornfield waiting for the lightning to go over, because then I was a little bit gun shy of lightning, after having it hit. My fingers got burnt. The fingers of my right hand were burnt slightly from the hit. It was funny because I told some friends who were motorcyclists, they're like, "Oh, that didn't happen. You're exaggerating." I'm like, "I got burnt fingers. I can show you how red they are and blistering they are on the end of my fingers where it was touching the lever." So,
wow.
Yeah, it was quite amazing. I mean, I was, I don't want to say shocked, but it was out of any possibility of something I thought was going to happen. I really didn't anticipate that, but feel very lucky that I managed that successfully without, any long-term effects.
No doubt.
I was thinking, the doctor suggested that I buy a lottery ticket, and I was really going to do it, but I just wanted out of that state after that happened. I wasn't feeling very lucky, so I kept on moving.
Well, it makes you think twice or three times, because a lot of us have ridden, where lightning's maybe around you, or raining hard, and there could be lightning, or there is ahead. Might be wise to just stop for a bit. Is that you're hitting a cornfield? Is that your suggestion to? Is that what you?
So then I was up in Rocky Mountain National Park, and there was lightning there too. So I talked to a ranger. She gives me the typical information, like, "Hey, you know what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to make yourself the lowest part and wherever you are. So if you're around trees, you lay down on the ground." So I'm up in Idaho going along, and it's just, I can, it's like surround sound. The thunder is just so loud, and I'm pulling over, and the highest thing is like a corn stalk. There's no trees or anything. So at this point I'm thinking, okay, what'd the ranger tell me? So I'm sitting there and I'm kind of huddled down, got my phone with me. I just parked the bike on the street, and it's hailing. I've got hailing going down my back and down inside my pants, between my pants and my underwear. And I'm just getting covered and cold and, not feeling like it's a really good trip. And I thought, well, I stayed in that cornfield for about an hour until it blew over, till it literally blew over. And at that point, I'd purchased an app to monitor weather a little bit more effectively. But it didn't really move along that far. And then I kept on going. Once I got back on the bike, I ride like 10 miles, and all of a sudden this big group of motorcyclists is coming the other way, like right into what I just left. And I thought, well, they must know something I don't know. Or, maybe it's a good odds, but I didn't have good odds with lightning before. So,
Yeah, you probably don't get a second chance at that. So, yeah.
That's right. Yes, I won't push my luck with that in the future.
Yeah. Wow. So during this, I guess the overall trip to visit all the national parks, how many miles and how many days did you do this in?
It was 54 days and 17,500 miles.
Wow. So almost a park a day, right? Yeah, almost. That's just, yeah. How many miles a day are you doing? I know that range is a lot, but
yeah, sometimes, some of the parks I was in for 2 or 3 days, so depending on how far the parks were, some of the parks are Utah, they're all clustered together. You can go through all 5 of Utah's parks probably in one day. If you staged on one end and tried to go through the other end, they're really close together, whereas I had to go from Arkansas. Was it Arkansas all the way up to Maine to get to the next park? The national park in Maine is, really far away from any other parks, so sometimes I didn't go any. There were no parks. There were no parks in one day. I'd be traveling between them. Sometimes I'd stay in the park for 2 or 3 nights. So like Grand Canyon, epic. Hiked in there while I was in there. So I was in there 3 days, 2 nights. So it just depended on the park and how far it was away. And then also there's 3 parks that were in the middle of the water too. So those parks took some time to get to. The bike didn't go to those parks because it's not allowed, but there's three national parks in the lower 48 that are not land-based parks.
Gotcha. But you visited them just...
I threw those in as extra. Okay. Yeah. No, wow. Not a lot you can do about that. Okay. That is quite a trip. I want to ask, did you have any, you're riding the Pan America for this whole trip. Let me ask this. What are you doing during this? It sounds like you're camping a lot. Is that what you did on this whole trip, is just tented in parks, or? It depended on the weather. So I had some big weather extremes. I was all the way down, actually California were the 2 extremes. Before I got out of Death Valley, it was 126 or 128. And it also, when I was coming back in on the east side of Yosemite, it was below 0. And I camped that night. So it just depended on the weather. If it was pouring down rain, I didn't camp. So it just depended on, I would camp and I would stay in some hotels, depending on the weather and the timing and everything like that. If I had a big day, I didn't arrive until dark, it's hard to set up camp and take it down when it's wet. So it just depended. So I would camp when it was a nice place to camp and the weather was playing along.
Okay. And is it fair to say that when you're planning for these trips, you're not like planning for hotels or I'm going to camp in this park? Are you just doing this stuff on the fly, or what?
I planned usually no more than the morning before the next night. I mean, like 12 hours ahead. So unless, there were some times when I tried to get into, some of the parks have ticketed entry. This is a whole new thing with the national park. So you have to have entry to get into the park. You can't just roll into the park and get into the park. So sometimes I had to make reservations. So Yosemite was the hardest one with ticketed entry to get into. I blanketed the whole month of August with tickets. I bought tickets for every single day for the month of August, because if not, I wasn't going to be allowed in. So some of the planning had to be, forward planning for that, but it was too hard to predict really more than 48 hours ahead. But I usually try to make some plans the night before, and the morning of, I'd firm up those plans of where I was going to stay.
So is the ticketing, because we've visited national parks on motorcycles, we have our, what do they call that? The international, or it's the, not international.
There's an annual national parks pass.
Yeah, national parks pass. Is that because of COVID they're ticketing now?
No, they started the process before COVID because there's just too many people in the parks.
Oh.
Right? So the parks that have a huge amount of people, they've started the ticketing process. So some of them I could do a workaround. Like Yosemite, you couldn't get in at all unless you had a ticket. But like Rocky Mountain National Park, you could get in after 4 p.m. or before 6 a.m. So that one, I tried after 4 p.m., but it was hailing. So I waited till the next morning and got at 6 a.m. and just got the most epic sunrise I'd ever seen, in the mountains ever, and so I, benefited from that. And then Glacier National Park, I came in and they wouldn't let me in. And it's interesting. I got, they were pulling people over, and there's 2 paths. Do you have a ticket? Don't have a ticket. And they brought me over and they said, if you don't have a ticket, here are the things you can do. I said, well, I'd really like to get in the park. And there's all the rangers around, all their official uniforms. And so I said, well, am I in the national park right here? And they said, yeah, technically you're in the national park in this parking lot. This is inside the national park. And I said, okay. And then I saw a guy sitting over in this little booth, plain clothes, t-shirt and shorts on. I said, hey, could you sign this for me? He says, what are you doing? And I said, well, I explained to what I was doing. And he pulls out his walkie-talkie and he goes, lane 3 motorcycle coming through, lane 3 motorcycle coming through. And he puts his walkie-talkie away and he goes, go up to lane 3. I said, who are you? And he goes, I'm the guy that makes all the decisions.
Nice. Nice.
I said, I can't believe this. This is awesome. And he says, you can't miss this park. He says, this is one of the parks you have to do. And he was happier than me. When I got done with the park, I came and visited him again. Like 6 hours later, he was still hanging out in the parking lot. He came running across the parking lot to me, asked me how I liked it, looked at a few of my pictures. I had some good fortune with things like that as well. But the ticketed entry makes it really challenging to keep moving because sometimes you have to wait 2 or 3 months to get a ticket. And that was one of them that was really going to be problematic if I couldn't get in that park, because I wanted to go to the Road of the Sun, which is a beautiful part of the park. And I was only allowed the first 100 feet into the park to turn around in the parking lot there.
Ride longer and treat your ass with some respect already. Get hooked up with a premium butt buffer seat cushion. This company of bikers developed a super thin hospital-grade seat cushion made of solid and elastic materials, and it's unlike those gel pads that will leak if punctured. The butt buffer is designed not to slide around in your seat, fits all motorcycles, installs in seconds, easily cleans, and helps to dampen vibrations. With plenty of models to choose from, they assure you'll have a comfortable ass when riding. Head over to the Law Abiding Biker Store and check out our lineup of butt buffer seat cushions.
I'm just for our listening audience, I'm looking up the annual pass. It's called the America the Beautiful Annual National Parks Pass. And as I scrolled down the screen a little bit, it does say some national parks require advanced reservations, even if you already have the America the Beautiful National Pass. I think we just got lucky several years ago when we went down and went through Yosemite and whatnot. They hadn't put that into effect. So that is some good information for the listening audience. Even if you do have that annual pass, you might want to check into those parks and see if they need ticketing.
Yeah, great point. And that's all new information in the past maybe two years, maybe 3 max. They just instituted that. And I think that's going to continue that way too, because just the amount of vehicle traffic that's gone through the parks is getting just way too much for the parks to handle.
And it seems like with COVID and people doing less international travel or flying in general, they were getting out in RVs and cars and seeing the United States. And I imagine because of COVID, so many of these parks are they're seeing traffic that they haven't seen. Number of traffic that they haven't seen in the past.
Right.
And I bet it won't go away. Like you say, it'll probably continue.
Yeah. And I you're right. I talked to some of the rangers and they said, I don't think this is ever going away. Especially from the parks that get so much vehicle traffic, So, some of the parks can handle it, but like, for instance, Yosemite's only got one road, basically. There's a road that goes all the way across and into the the Mammoth Mountain area, that Tioga Pass, and that's only one road, one lane each way. They're trying to squeeze all those people into it. So I think they're trying to protect it and doing the best they can. I think you're going to see more and more bus traffic coming out. So that would be a way you can get in. If you can't get in on your motorcycle, is you can park your motorcycle out and take the bus in, but then you don't get to ride in the park, but you can still see the park.
Hey, Chris, I wanted to back up just a little bit because when we were talking about the Pan America, you said you thought it'd be the right bike for the trip. What made you think that versus like a touring model? Was it the type of roadway you were going to be on, or your preferred riding style, or what?
Yeah, I'd ridden the GS before, the BMW GS. That had been the mainstay of my trips. And this bike was pretty similar, and I'd read tests on it, and I was impressed. And I was skeptical about it, to be honest. First time ever making a bike like this, unless you go back into the 60s and 70s with their scramblers. But first time making a bike like this, I was thinking, can they really pull it off? Am I going to be happy with it? That's why I did like a 2-week shakedown with it in the beginning, just to think, is it going to be okay? Can I carry luggage on this? Is it going to be able to go off-road? And to answer your question, I wanted to do on and off-road. I wanted to explore the parks that I couldn't explore on a paved road, because there are some dirt roads in a lot of the parks. Like, for instance, the closest one to me in Death Valley, there's literally hundreds of miles off road that you're allowed to go off road that I wanted to do. I didn't want to be on a street bike, so I brought my pump with me to air down if I got into sandy situations, got the right tires on it, brought tools to fix any flats, et cetera, but I wanted to be able to go on and off road. And that's why I thought that bike would be good.
We got the opportunity to review the Pan America in August. We went down to Sturgis and played around with it. And some of the questions that we get on that video, and I think you can help us answer these questions, is whether or not we think that it would be a good touring bike, cross-country bike. So what was your overall impression of it, and would you recommend it as a long-distance touring bike?
So I feel fortunate. I've got a couple of bikes in my garage, like the other nuts, like you guys probably included, have more than one bike that kicks your cars outside. And if I only had one bike before the Pan American came out, it would probably be the BMW GS. You know, I've got sport bikes, I've got all sorts of bikes, but the GS is a great all-around bike. And I think the Pan America falls in that same category, is a perfect all-around bike. I mean, if you never take it in the dirt, which I know a lot of people don't with GSs, and they probably won't with the Pan America either, it's a great just touring bike. One of the technologies that really stood out for me, and I mean, this is an honest assessment. I don't have to say anything good about it if I don't want to, but I'll tell you what I really loved about the bike. And I think other bikes will follow, is the adaptive suspension, is where it lowers down, because I'm just a normal size guy at 5'10". And I've always struggled with the height of the GS or any other bikes. I mean, whether you're talking about the Triumph or any of those other bikes, because you got to sit them high to get the clearance if you're really going to go off road. You know, and then a lot of people get into all that hoo-ha of changing out the suspension and lowering it, and all that just to get on it. This suspension automatically lowers. So when you're, I think it's under 11 or 12 miles an hour, it lowers. And when you go over 11 or 12 miles an hour, it raises. So they've solved that issue of normal sized guys riding a dual sport bike. That was just one of the features that was really, really handy. And I loved the engine on it, even at long, and it's not overly aggressive or loud like a Ducati. I kind of like that sound, but not for 8 hours a day. But the engine is just a phenomenal engine all around, on road, off road, going long distances, on cruise control. It's a nice power plant they've put in there, I have to say. And I really liked that part of it.
Overall comfortable as well?
Yes. I mean, I didn't find it, there's some adjustability on the seat. There's some, adjustability in the handlebars. Mm-hmm. I mean, the comfort was great.
Awesome. I appreciate you answering that, because we get that question quite a bit. And while we've played with it and demoed it, we haven't, taken it on a 54-day ride. So that's some good information that we can use and give to our audience. So thank you, Chris.
Yeah. Thanks for asking those questions. And if you think of any more, specific ones you have during this time, I wasn't thinking a lot about the bike when I started this, but, I can definitely attest to, a long-term test on it and see what happens. When I picked up the bike, I said, I wanted to know if I had to take a spare chain with me, because I'm not used to riding with a chain. So when I brought it back, when I picked it up, I said, how long before I have to replace the chain? He said, you'll let me know. So when I brought it back, I dumped it off and I said, there's your long-term test. It's 18,000 miles and the chain's shot, So I know that a lot of people stress about having a chain, and I've had a shaft for so many years. But if you get 15 or, 50, let's just say 15,000 miles out of a chain, how many times do you have to change it, each year? How many miles are you really riding? And that was some hard riding on it too. I mean, I rode through dirt, it got a lot of dirt in it, and, and I probably could have maintained it a little bit better and adjusted a little bit better, but it's the length of the chain time that it lasted surprised me as well. And it was done by the time I got done with it, for sure.
Wow. Well, that's definitely good to know. The chain test, you don't hear a lot about that. Anything else interesting happen on your trip? I know we talked about getting struck by lightning. Anything else you want to share on this Guinness Book of World Records? Because you did it, obviously.
I'll tell you another interesting part. So it was have to get into all the parks, right? So I get in, I'm coming down now at the very end during that firestorm season that happened in Washington, Oregon, and California, that was just engulfing the western part of the United States. And the ranger in Olympic National Park is up there, and I said, God, it's really smoky today. And she goes, those darn California fires. And I said, wait a minute. I said, there's another state between you and us. And she said, you must be from California. I said, yeah, that's where I'm headed back. But I said, there's a whole additional state, Oregon. They've got some fires going too. So anyway, what was I going to say about that? I got into my last park. California was on fire. I mean, I've got some, it actually scared me at some point because there were roadblocks being set up everywhere. And I got to this one roadblock where they detoured me and it looked like they shot me directly into the fire. I mean, it was getting darker and darker and oranger. And I was right around Redding, California, getting staged to go into Volcanic National Park. And so I finally got in, and I actually drove back during that time, back to the California Highway Patrol and the firefighters. And I asked them, I said, are you sure it's going to be safe for me to go this way? Because it looked like I was riding into the fire, but I got out of it and everything was okay. The next day I got up and I went to Volcanic National Park. That's not, yes. Lassen National Park, Lassen Volcanic National Park. And I got up to the gate, and the guy, did you guys see Wally World with John Candy when he gets to the gate and Chevy Chase? I get up there and he goes, sorry, folks, the park's closed. And I asked, it was a young guy, like in his early 20s. I said, did you ever see that movie? And he goes, yeah. And I said, I don't want things to go bad here, but I'm getting in the park. I said, I only got this park and another park to do, and I'm done. And I told him what I was doing. And he said, and they're shooing everybody out. They're evacuating the park. They're shooing everybody out the other end of the park, going by me, the opposite end that I want to go in. And he says, well, how far do you got to get in? I said, I just got to get in a few hundred yards. I'd love to ride through it. And then he let me in, let me sit around there for a while. And then I got out of the park. That was one that was when you first asked me, that could have been a showstopper if I couldn't have gotten in that park. Then I went around the outside of the park, and I went down the fire roads and got into the park where the fire wasn't happening. The fire was happening during in the population of where people were camping. So I went around the back side of the park, the north side of the park, and dumped into the park and fire roads that have been through there. So that was where the GS style, or the dual purpose style bike of the Pan America came in handy, as being able to do that, where I couldn't have done that on a street bike. They were pretty serious logging roads. I kept on going in deeper and deeper and thinking, how far can I get in before I'm going to get in trouble here? Because they weren't really well groomed. They were good for, a 4-wheel drive fire vehicle to go into or something. But that was another interesting part, is getting into those last parks. And I was happy when I got home and the Congress or the president didn't add another park to the list.
Very cool. Did Guinness Book, do they send you your plaque or whatever?
Still waiting for it. They're digging through my evidence. It'll happen though. But the Guinness is a business. So if you want to pay like $1,000 to have it approved and $1,000 for the first approval and then approval in the end, they do it really quickly. But for normal people, you got to wait 3 or 4 months for it to be approved.
Gotcha. Well, congrats on that. And as we take it out here, you got any other major world records that you're going to try to break, or you haven't decided yet?
I don't. That was a unique one. I'd never done that before because I've sort of ridden on my own. I really want to get. I've ridden through the Himalaya mountains in Nepal before, and I really want to get back there and do that again because I find that pretty unique and special with the culture there. That's one that's on my immediate list, but it sort of got canceled because of COVID here. So no Guinness in the future, but some definite rides on the horizon once I can get geared up and get out again. Very
cool. Where, if people want to reach out or, they want to learn more about you or whatever, where can they go?
I'll give you my email address. Is that good to give here?
You give whatever you're comfortable. Yep.
Sure. It's chris@planetearthquest.com.
Okay. Very good. And there you go. Thanks for being with us today. We really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me, Ryan and Lurch. Is it common Lurch here?
Yep.
Okay. Thanks for having me. I'm glad we got over the technological hurdle. The rain stopped. We probably won't have it for another 300 days now, but the storm has subsided during our time here today.
Yeah. Well, good. Yeah, we were definitely glad it worked out. And you take care of yourself. And thanks again.
Thank you. Thank you, both of you. Bye-bye.
Okay. Wow.
Great interview, huh?
Amazing, man. Amazing.
I got to say that that's one of the better ones we've had. That was good. I enjoyed that.
It was, yeah. Fun talking. You could go on and on.
For sure.
Asking questions about that, because it's fascinating. But yeah, Chris Foster, there you go. Guinness Book of World Records. And probably got, like he says, some more things to do in the future. So you'll probably see that, yeah.
He didn't mention it, but if you want to follow him, he's got a website called PlanetEarthQuest.com. So you can check him out there. He's got links to his bio and to all his social media right there. PlanetEarthQuest.com.
Yeah, very awesome. Appreciate him being on the show. And call to action, guys. Call to action. Hey, that's right. Bike Bright Spray Motorcycle Cleaner and Degreaser Motorcycle Wet Wash. Absolutely the best wet wash motorcycle cleaner on the market. Bike Bright, tried and tested right here by the law-abiding biker crew. It's our number one go-to for wet wash motorcycle cleaner. Its super foaming triple action formula gets in all the cracks and crevices.
All the cracks.
You know how we don't like dirty cracks and crevices, Lurch?
No, nobody likes a dirty crack.
Easy as pie. Spray it on, let it soak, rinse it off with Bikeaholics. There you go. Then get out there and spend some more time riding. And check out our whole line. We got a bunch of Bike Bright products for your specific motorcycle cleaning and detailing needs. Head over to lawabidingbiker.com/store Big Daddy Kane and go down there in stock, ready to ship to you right now. And of course, don't forget to pick up that Bug Slide while you're there, because that's our number one go-to waterless motorcycle cleaner. There you go. Appreciate you guys being here. That's right. Don't forget lawabidingbiker.com/contact if you want to leave us a voicemail on your computer. It's free. And from anywhere in the world, obviously, there's a contact form. We love the voicemails. You can also just leave us an email over there. Don't forget, guys, wherever you're listening to us, this podcast, make sure you get on your whatever platform it is and give us a rating, especially iTunes. Helps bump us up in the rankings so more bikers around the world can find us and join this thing we call the Biker Revolution.
#Biker Revolution.
Yeah, buddy. Thanks, guys, for being here.